Imagine you are 22 years old and you've just got back from the trip of a lifetime to San Francisco to pursue your dream of starting this new company. You spent the last 3 months of your life putting everything on hold to pitch it to these investors to try and get it off the ground. But it has not worked at all. You've been rejected by everyone, even though you spoke to literally everyone you could speak to. And you've returned back to your home country of Australia in the city of Perth with nothing. You're back to square one with no real clear plan of how to move forward or any connections to help you get started. What do you even do? How do you even go to the next step? Do you give up or do you keep going from there? That is exactly where Melanie Perkins was in the early 2010s. Her and her partner Cliff Obrecht had started this very successful yearbook company called Fusion Books from their home city, Perth in Australia, which if you don't know is I think it's the most isolated city in the entire world. Australia is already super isolated, and then Perth is the most isolated city of Australia. But you've got this company called Fusion Books, which fits the need perfectly of providing schools who are expected to make well-designed yearbooks, and the staff there are expected to be able to do that with very easy to use tools to be able to create, design, and then print those yearbooks. And it's a perfect fit. It becomes a successful company that you started when you were 19 years old. But you have a much bigger vision for what this could be. You want to completely change the entire design world by making it accessible to anyone to design professional looking logos, posters, flyers, graphics, documents, social media posts, or really anything else you can think of. Fusion Books is a great solution to create well-designed yearbooks without any design skills. At the time, all there is Photoshop, which does require some knowledge and skill and time to build up that skill, which if you're a school teacher, you really don't have the time to invest heavily in learning Photoshop on a computer from a school in 2009 on top of teaching kids. It's probably not really even realistic. But it was while she was running this company that Melanie met a man by the name of Bill Tai at the Western Australia Inventor of the Year conference in Perth, who introduces her to the world of startup culture and funding for companies to try and chase their massive ambitions and become more than just a small company that services schools in Australia. Melanie and her partner Cliff Obrecht wanted to completely change the design world and bring it into the modern age. So you don't have to use Photoshop and have technical knowledge and graphic design skills to create something that looks good. You just need a computer and access to their tool, which at the time was Fusion Books, which would later be renamed Canva. Bill is well connected in the startup world and knows a lot of investors that might potentially invest in Melanie's dream. The problem is no one was interested, and she just got back from meeting Bill in San Francisco, and she's now back in Perth with no real clear direction to go in. But she does hear about this thing called Mai Tai, which is a kiteboarding and entrepreneurship or like a startup conference run by Bill himself with a specific focus on kiteboarding. Everyone that goes to this needs to know how to kiteboard, which if you're not familiar with kiteboarding is a pretty dangerous sport where you attach a kite to a surfboard and hold on for life pretty much, hoping you don't go airborne and get taken off with the wind. If it's too windy, you float away. If it's not windy enough, you don't get off of the water and you don't get to surf. I've never done it myself, but it looks quite hard. And I've seen plenty of Instagram reels of people having very near massive injuries from kiteboarding. It's not something you just can start tomorrow. This isn't like going out and just playing tennis. This is something that requires equipment, it requires training, and has genuine risk. But Melanie has just got back from San Francisco and she needs a foot in anywhere, really. And the small tiny door of opportunity has opened to her by meeting Bill and being told about Mai Tai. So she takes advantage of it. She pretends to be into kiteboarding while in San Francisco, sends emails to Bill Tai saying, "Oh, just got back from kiteboarding. I'm working on this new pitch." She's never kiteboarded. She's learning to do it on the spot just so that she can go to this conference and try and meet a few people. No guarantee of anything. And she's also just got back from actually being in San Francisco and had failed at pitching this company to people. So there's no real indication that this is going to work. It's just a complete shot in the dark. She also has to pay to get there. It's in Maui. And Maui is nowhere near Perth or Australia, so it's not cheap to go to. At the time, she spends half of the entire business bank account of her successful company, Fusion Books, that she's been working for 3 years to build up, and it's come so far, but she's gambled it all on going to this kiteboarding conference for the very slim chance of maybe getting to know an investor and maybe getting investment into her company. That's exactly what she does. She puts all the money towards it and goes to Mai Tai. She meets a lot of people, tells a lot of people about her vision for Canva or Fusion Books at the time, and how she wants to revolutionize the graphic design industry and make it collaborative and easy to use for anyone so that you don't need years of training. and you don't need partnerships with stock photo companies to get great high quality assets. She gives everyone the pitch. Even at this conference though, with everything on the line and just coming off the back of a trip to San Francisco that had failed by her own standards, she still goes for it. And this was a very intimidating environment. These are all people, very, very successful people that have built huge companies and have really no reason to believe that someone from Perth who is 22 years old and has no real background or track record of success other than Fusion Books, but no track record of taking investors' money and building something that works. It's a long shot, to be honest. But she does get the opportunity to pitch all of them while at this conference. So Melanie and Cliff stay up all night preparing this pitch for the opportunity at getting to meet some people or maybe getting investors. And the pitch lands. It doesn't immediately get huge investment, but people are actually interested, which is great growth from the previous trip to San Francisco. A few people say they want to stay in touch and want to be potentially involved, but nothing concrete yet. One person even offers Melanie a room to stay in next time she's in San Francisco, so she can save a lot of money that she now doesn't have because she went to this conference next time she visits San Francisco to try and pitch to more people, which they do take them up on. And it was during this conference that they meet someone by the name of Cameron Adams, who's a very serious and highly regarded designer and engineer who worked at Google, who was interested in the Canva business, which is a very big deal, because Melanie does not have a technical background and Cliff also doesn't have a technical background. So they don't have anyone to actually build the product even if they had money. They just had the idea. And this was a very big deal at the time because without a technical co-founder to help build the product, it was very hard to convince people to give them money to build this company when they don't really have anyone to build it. Melanie and Cliff both had their experience from Fusion Books, but they didn't have a technical background at all. So with this gamble, they haven't secured investment and they haven't really got a team to build Canva yet, but they have a few more foots in the door. They also have somewhere to stay, I guess, in San Francisco to save money next time they go. Again, it doesn't really seem like a huge success, and she may have learned kiteboarding potentially for nothing when you're looking at it at the end of this trip. And even when Melanie went back to Perth after the conference and reached out to Cam, who was going to help them build the product, to see if he was interested, he emailed back to politely say no, he wasn't interested. So this really isn't looking good. It's another attempt, it's another across-the-world trip to try and get this off the ground, and another, at least on the surface, failed attempt at getting investment and getting a team together. But the idea stays with Cam. It doesn't leave him immediately. And eventually, also via email, after Melanie just sends their 44th version of their pitch deck for Canva to him, just for advice, he actually agrees over a call to help Canva and build the product, which is huge. Now they've gone from just 2 people from Perth with some experience in Fusion Books to a team with a former Google employee who is a very highly regarded engineer and designer to build the product, which makes it a way better pitch to people to give them money to actually build Canva. Then everything starts to change. They go back to San Francisco on that offer for a free place to stay, and they continue to pitch to people and put the idea of Canva out there to try and get people involved. And what it ends up being is $3 million in investment in the original funding round for Canva. And you can see here by this graph that almost all of them came from Bill Tai, who is that investor they met by chance at this Perth conference years ago. These investors here were invited to Mai Tai when they met at this conference that Melanie learned kiteboarding specifically for, and took a risk of maybe even getting injured and pretended to be into kiteboarding just to go to, and spent half of the bank account of the entire company just to have a chance and a foot in the door at meeting these people. So many of them came from here. Rick, who was also at Mai Tai, introduced her to a bunch of investors just through email. And then the other big branch, which is Lars, founder of Google Maps, was introduced also by Bill Tai. So this one connection that they just made in Perth provided so much of the connection and money to build Canva, other than these 2 from AngelList, that's gone on to become this massive, massive design company that is fulfilling its vision to change, or it has fulfilled its vision to change how people design and make it more collaborative and accessible to anyone without any sort of graphic design experience. It's still a private company, but there's estimates to say it's around like 40 to 60 billion, so it's a massive success. And from what I could tell by Googling this, is the biggest tech startup in Australia. There is a lot more to this story, of course, like building the product and launching it and how it went on to become so popular. But the spark of this massive company was by meeting someone in Perth and gambling on going to a kiteboarding conference while pretending to even like kiteboarding. I don't know if Melanie still does kiteboarding. That would be cool if it actually became something that she's passionate about. I haven't seen anything about that, so I don't think so. There is also more to this story, with the actual way that Fusion Books started and the investment they had to do just to build this first product is interesting in itself, but is a whole different story. And the amount of effort that went into going to transition from a small company in Perth to a giant global tech company. And something also interesting to mention is that the Australian government matched all of these investors' investment into Canva. So it doubled their initial investment. So they raised $1.5 million from all of these people, and then the extra 1.5 just came from the Australian government. And in a lot of interviews with Melanie, she says that there was a lot of pressure actually to relocate the entire company to San Francisco, because that's just where all of these types of companies were and where all of the talent was. But because of this investment from the Australian government, they still moved away from Perth, but they moved to Sydney, where there was just a little bit more talent and more people and more of a community around startups than Perth at the time, which is a great decision because it's now one of the biggest tech companies in Australia and has created so many jobs in Australia. So great move, great gamble, I guess, from the government, and has sort of broken the doors to the unicorns in Australia, which is very, very cool. If you can't tell from my voice, I am also from Australia, and is why I find this story particularly interesting. So that was another thing that they had to convince all of these investors of. Not only were they a small, non-technical background team from Perth that didn't go to some massive college in America and have lots of connections already, they were just two regular people from this city in a very isolated part of Australia that wanted to take on Adobe and Google Docs and basically every design software. And through a lot of work and a couple of gambles with going to the kiteboarding conference, actually made it happen.